They can't debank you. They can't take your money from your bank account like they've done time and time again. With fiat, you're absolutely cancelable. I had realized that everything else was a waste of time. Bitcoin is the only asset without centralized counterparty risk. No one can take it from me, and no one can stop me from using it. Bitcoin is so much more than a financial instrument. It is a tool of freedom, and it allows you to opt out of a system that has so much control over our lives. I think that in the next 6 months, we're going to have a period where the price of Bitcoin in dollars is significantly higher than it is right now. There's going to be a day where the United States and a lot of countries following the United States are going to start actively and publicly acquiring Bitcoin. And once that happens, things just get nuts. There is precisely one way to stop Bitcoin, and that is to not need it. That's never going to happen.
Today, I'm excited to welcome Adam Simecka to the podcast. Adam is Bitcoin only, a board member of Bitcoin is Better, and founder of Manna Bitcoin, a self-custodial Bitcoin wallet. Welcome to the Bitcoin Edge, Adam.
Thank you for having me, Paul. It's great to be here today.
It's great to chat with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to Bitcoin.
My first exposure to Bitcoin was a little bit of a detour. I was in the military and I was deployed at the time overseas, and I had a lot of free time. And so I was investing in stocks and trying to figure out how to save as much money as I could into my future for my family. And through that, I got some targeted ads from Investopedia, and they had an article on Ethereum. So that unfortunately was my first exposure to Bitcoin was through an altcoin, but the article itself was an explanation of proof of work, because at the time Ethereum was a proof of work consensus mechanism, and that's what clicked for me in my head. And once I started reading that and I understood what was taking place, it just clicked in my head. Like I said, I just immediately kind of dropped everything and realized that I needed to get moving on this because it was a very big deal. And then, of course, through that study, I discovered Bitcoin, and then started, quote unquote, investing into the asset and the assets, and eventually, just step by step, led myself down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and orange pilled myself through a bunch of different types of content online, and study through Bitcoin. So that's kind of where I started my professional journey. I launched a Bitcoin mining company in 2017. And that's kind of where I got a lot of my business acumen behind Bitcoin and managing products and launching, an entire customer facing business in Bitcoin. And then most recently, this year in 2025, I launched my second company called Manna, and that is a Bitcoin payments platform that aims to make Bitcoin payments ubiquitous and easy for everybody.
Wow, that's really cool. So you came to Bitcoin the back door. And did you have an altcoin journey, or you pretty much found Bitcoin right away?
I had an altcoin journey, I would say. I would have always said, like, from the very beginning, like, I understood the value proposition of Bitcoin, but it hadn't fully set in what all of that entailed. And I say that because I was always chasing gains. In the beginning, I was looking for that next trade, and it took me years, unfortunately, to realize that there is no exit in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the exit. Everything else has an exit. Every other coin, the entire purpose of it is to just exit into something else. And most of the time it's fiat currency. But for those that, maybe are a little bit further, maybe their exit is Bitcoin. And at some point I realized that I didn't want more fiat. I didn't want more altcoins. What I really wanted to end up with in the long term was more Bitcoin. And so I had some introspective thought, and a lot of this kind of unfolded through my eyes being opened during the COVID era and all of the intervention, let's just say, and the centralization and control that took place over that time period. And I had revelations to myself and realized that everything else was a waste of time. And the only reason why I was doing it is so that I could hand somebody else the bag that I was holding, With Bitcoin, that's not the case. With Bitcoin, there isn't a greater fool. That doesn't have to be. With Bitcoin, the end game is to just accumulate more Bitcoin and, be more free. And along the way, you might increase your purchasing power too, and that's a great perk. But that's not the only reason why we're here.
Yes. And we're going to talk about that. It sounds like during COVID, you realized what the problem was. And the problem for many of us is that inflation is eating away our purchasing power, the manipulation, like you mentioned. Why do you think more people don't see the problem?
I think there is just enough to keep people needing their next fix. And I don't think it's an accident that so many people live hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, and they're just barely eking by. I think that enables them to be a lot more submissive and dependent on the hand that feeds. I think that's really why a lot of people are asleep at the wheel, is just simply because they're so desperate. And until you understand what Bitcoin is, it's really hard to see the light. And I think just takes a little bit of time. Once you start getting into Bitcoin and you start seeing your value transformed into an asset that can't be arbitrarily debased by somebody, then you start to see the exit hatch. And over time, it just becomes more and more clear that you don't need that other system, and that Bitcoin can actually support your entire financial sovereignty. I think that that's probably why, people are in this rut of consistent dependence, and the only way out is to, in my opinion, I think the conclusion is you have to hold Bitcoin in self custody. That is the only solution to this problem.
Yes, because any of the other ways, the ETFs or the treasury companies, they could one day possibly be co-opted. Do you
Uh,
believe that?
I do believe that. I don't think that that's what most people are thinking of, though. I think that that's why they're so enticing, is because they're all stripped down. They're very, very palatable ways of gaining Bitcoin exposure. Of course, if you're just here for a number go up, which I don't judge anybody for, that's what brought me in. But if that's why you're into Bitcoin, there's not doesn't seem to be too many downsides to the ETF, because in all honesty, they don't have that much more risk or issues than other traditional fiat instruments, which they all have them though, and that's the problem, and that's the only thing that that's what only Bitcoin can solve, is separation from that centralized those centralized counterparty risks. Bitcoin is the only asset without centralized counterparty risk. So I don't think many people are really thinking about that when they're getting into Bitcoin. I hope that the ETFs and all of these really just smooth, shiny objects are enough to get people to start learning more about self-custodial Bitcoin. Maybe that's more wishful thinking than anything, but I do believe that, taking that first step does end up hopefully transforming people and getting people down that Bitcoin rabbit hole and orange pilling people, as we say. But I think the main concern there, rather than just the risk of seizure or control or something going wrong, is that you don't actually see the value and the benefits that Bitcoin can provide to yourself with your freedom. And one thing that I noticed with Bitcoin in self custody, there's this moment that just clicked for me when I realized that no one can take it from me and no one can stop me from using it. And once you understand that and fully grasp those two concepts, your life becomes so much more independent and free, because now you can say what you want to say, you can be who you want to be, and you can build what you want to build. And if somebody doesn't like it, they can't silence you. They can't kick you off their platform. They can't debank you. They can't take your money from your bank account like they've done uh, time and time again. I've actually had that happen to me before, and I live in the United States, which is that's very rare to happen. But this happens every day in other countries all over the world. So my point is, I think that the takeaway from that is Bitcoin is so much more than a financial instrument. It is a tool of freedom, and it allows you to opt out of a system that has so much control over our lives.
No, I love that. And I love the feeling of self-custody too, although it can be a little bit scary putting all that responsibility on yourself to, not lose the Bitcoin. Do you think there are other challenges that stop people going into self-custody, and how do you overcome them?
I think it's just something that people haven't spent a lot of time thinking about before. Most people are accustomed to letting somebody else control their lives. And that goes both ways. If you give somebody control over your money, they have control over you. And so if that's the life that you want to live, it's really hard to convince that person that they should take self custody. And unfortunately, something bad usually has to happen for them to understand the importance of it, or something bad has to happen to somebody close to them. But I think that there are, again, are more advantages, simply because, you what I mentioned earlier, like in the United States, we have the freedom of speech. Of course, we can say what we want to say, but in practice, what usually happens is you start saying things that people don't like, and you start losing some of your freedom, so to speak. And even though we do have that right in this country, it doesn't always equate to being able to exercise and practice that freedom. With Bitcoin, I feel like it definitely enables you to be a little bit more open and transparent with people, because if they don't like it, it's not like, you're basically uncancelable with Bitcoin. No one can cancel you. With fiat, you're absolutely cancelable. So um, I think the hurdle, to answer your question, the hurdle with people getting into self custody and taking that responsibility and that ownership, it is a pretty big step for a lot of people the first time they do it. Um, Thankfully, it's much easier today than it's ever been before. And the way that we've solved that problem with Manna is just a 12-word seed phrase. So 12 English words that you can keep written down or stamped into metal somewhere, and you can recover those anywhere you want. Now, although Manna is self-custodial, a lot of people like to take things to the next step. And if you're wanting to take things to the next step and put all of your financial future into Bitcoin, you're going to want to look into something called cold storage, meaning you have your assets in a Bitcoin wallet that is completely safe and secure from the internet. It hasn't touched any online device. So that's not Mana, but I do just want to say that it is a very similar process, and you can do the same thing with cold storage with 12 words. So yes, you can put your entire financial future into 12 English readable words, and no one can take it from you. No one can stop you from using it.
Hey there! Don't forget to like and subscribe to help me grow the channel. Want to sleep easy? MICROSEED lets you stamp your seed phrase onto a small steel washer. Buy the device once and use it forever. I love it. It's discreet, precise, and easy to transport. Get yours below. For peace of mind with collaborative custody, the Bitcoin Advisor is a trusted team who can also help with inheritance planning. Just scan the QR code or use the link below. And check out these super cool SATOSHOEs with over 40 styles to choose from. Plus 10% off with my link below. Now, back to the show. And even though that is connected to the internet, that, like you mentioned, is not cold storage, but so far it has been very safe, and it is a way to possibly have some of the money that you pay bills with or you use Bitcoin for, which is similar to Strike. Can you tell me the differences?
I like to distinguish between three different categories of holding your Bitcoin. Category one is custodial, meaning there is a custodian that is not you. So somebody else is holding your Bitcoin, which means it's really their Bitcoin, not yours. So a custodial Bitcoin solution like Strike means they're holding your Bitcoin on your behalf. That means you need to ask them for permission to use it. That means they have control unilaterally over what actually happens with that Bitcoin, meaning if they decide one day that they don't want you to have it, or that you've done something that somebody somewhere deems illegal or irresponsible, maybe they just close your account, right? I'm not saying Strike would ever do that, but they could. And in fact, with people that do end up on certain lists, they have to do that. They're forced to by the government. And so keep that in mind. If you're using a custodial service, which is like this first category, they have full control over the Bitcoin, not you. The second category is where I would put Manna, and that is in a self-custodial hot wallet, meaning it's on a device that has touched the internet. This is the category of where Manna lives, and the reason being is because it is much easier to use than the third category, which we'll get to in a moment. But Manna is intended to be a payments platform. So this is how you're going to buy your groceries, you buy your coffee, you want to go, I buy my raw milk, my meat, I buy my cheese, my salsa, all these things that I need for everyday life, my soap, my shampoo, all these things that I use. I go find Bitcoiners that accept Bitcoin for payment. And this is the process that I use. It's a hot wallet, and it's easy to spend, easy to send, easy to receive. And in fact, I like to put extra emphasis on the word wallet, because wallet tends to be a little bit, it just gets kind of thrown around, and it's applied to all these three categories. But wallet specifically, I think, is a good metaphor, because it's like the money that you're putting in your purse or your billfold, and you're carrying it around with you, right? You're probably not putting $1 million into your purse or your billfold and walking around town. So that is where Manna lives. And it's a good bridge, because it can go from category 1 to category 2 and then to category 3 and back and forth. So what is category 3? Category 3 is like what I mentioned earlier. It's cold storage self-custody, meaning you probably have a hardware device, and you're able to communicate with that in an offline fashion. I'm not going to recommend any particular device, but basically what it does is it allows you to sign transactions to get it into something that does touch the internet, like Manna or a merchant or a custodial wallet. So that third category is where you would want to put $1 million or $1 billion, right? So that is where you keep your life savings. It's in cold storage. And my general recommendation is, probably if you start getting up into this is how I'd frame it. Consider the price of a hardware wallet, as people would call them, or a signing device. So this is a piece of hardware, usually a pretty small device, that holds your seed or can interact with a private key. And consider the cost of that. Now, those are probably somewhere around $100 for an average, 100 US dollars for an average device, maybe 200 for a nicer end one. But that is probably what you need to consider when you're thinking about how much you can store in that, or how much you need to move into cold storage. So if you've got $1,000, you can probably afford $100 hardware wallet. That's probably a good point to start. If you've got $100, there's not a whole lot of point in buying $100 hardware wallet if you can't afford it. So I would say just that's probably the main factor, is how much of your Bitcoin do you want to commit to keeping safe. So those are the three categories: custodial, online, centralized. That's category 1. Category 2 is a self-custodial hot wallet. And then category 3 is offline cold storage, where you're going to keep your life savings.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. That breaks it down really well. I'm just going to give you an example. I sent my brother $4,000. It cost about $55 in fees, and it had to go via, Europe, and he's in Africa. It's a long story how to get the money to him. And I said to him, on Bitcoin, this would cost less than 55 cents. He's like, wow, that's a big difference. But, I just plant these seeds. How do you orange pill?
Yeah, well, I have tried very hard over the years orange pilling, and I've had different strategies throughout my time in Bitcoin. Right now, I can tell you my strategy is I I go find the people that are interested. I don't push it on people that aren't. Where wasn't necessarily my strategy years ago. I wanted to tell everybody about Bitcoin and show them how awesome it was. But what I found is that it didn't matter how hard I pushed with some people or how much evidence I provided people. Some people just don't want to listen, and I wasted a lot of energy doing that. And frankly, I just don't have time anymore to force it on people that aren't willing to listen. So today, I open myself up to people that are interested, and I focus on those people. I let people, see something in their life, a need perhaps that Bitcoin fills, and then I approach them and kind of walk them down that process. And I think that that's a big part of what actually does end up orange pilling people. I don't think it's so much somebody telling you that you need to buy Bitcoin as it is you see a need for Bitcoin in your own life. I think that most people, most Bitcoiners came into Bitcoin because it solved a problem for them. For me, you mentioned sending money globally. When I built my first Bitcoin company, I was paying people on the other side of the world through the traditional fiat rails. In fact, some of my team was in a country that where Bitcoin was absolutely illegal, and I had paid them in Bitcoin before, but it was hard, and they weren't able to easily use it, and so eventually they just wanted fiat, and it was very hard getting them money, I'll say that. Where with Bitcoin I could just click a couple buttons and they have it. With fiat I had to physically travel to banks and different remittance services providers to try to get money into the country, because this particular country was so blocked off from the financial world that it was just like pulling teeth, just trying to get them US dollars. Because I'm not going to name the country, but they were, on a sanctioned list from the US. And so that was part of the problem. And with Bitcoin, that's not the case. With Bitcoin, like you said, it's cheap, it's fast, it's easy, and you're done. So that was kind of a big eye-opening moment for me, is realizing how difficult it is to work with fiat currency, where with Bitcoin, it's just a breeze. So um, I think that that's going to end up orange pilling a lot of people, is just how easy and cheap Bitcoin is.
Yes, it's time for an upgrade. I mean, it's time. We're getting so connected through the internet, AI, and we need our money to be just as easy. I mean, that's such a great example. I know you're a big advocate for Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. Do you think that Bitcoin needs to be used as money to survive as a store of value?
100%. I don't think Bitcoin has any value. And I've said this before, I've said it many times. I think the value of Bitcoin is precisely zero unless it can be used as money, to include being used as a medium of exchange. I don't think you can separate money into the three categories without the ability to be all three simultaneously, with the three categories being store of value, medium of exchange, and unit of account. So, although I don't think Bitcoin is typically used as a unit of account, widely right now, you can use it as a unit of account. And if you couldn't, my argument would be Bitcoin would not be money.
Mm.
So, um, I don't say, like, I wouldn't say that, like, if you're not using, if no one's using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, that it can't have value. But I will say that I'm not 100% certain, if Bitcoin could not under any circumstance be used as a medium of exchange, it would have zero value.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of people focus on price, and it does bring people in. How much do you focus on price?
A lot of people might be surprised to hear that I focus on price a lot. And it's not necessarily because I think that it's the most important aspect to Bitcoin's um, value as an individual, although that is a big component. The reason why I see so much importance and put so much weight on the price of Bitcoin is because of one fact, and I call it the Bitcoin scoreboard. So when the world is looking at Bitcoin, that is the first thing they're seeing. And this scoreboard is telling the world who's winning. And as the price keeps going up, then we can see that Bitcoin is adding more points against the opponents, right? So more than anything, it is the best indicator of adoption. It is also the best indicator of its ability to hold value into the future. And without that, Bitcoin, is not needed, right? Because Bitcoin has to replace the system that is currently holding up. The system that's a placeholder for money right now. Fiat currencies, in my opinion, they're not money. Bitcoin is money, and we can see that because money is going to have this gravitational pull from value from everywhere else. And so you're going to start seeing fiat currencies collapse in value against Bitcoin forever. So that's why I think price is important, not so much just because it buys me more, steak and shake burgers, but because, it is the Bitcoin scoreboard and it shows everybody who's winning.
That's a really interesting perspective. I like that. So, do you think we will still have the 4-year cycle? Hi, everyone. I'm excited to share that I'll be a speaker at BTC Prague 2026, the biggest and most influential Bitcoin only event in Europe, from the 11th to the 13th of June. Come and join me to hear incredible speakers like Michael Saylor, Jack Mallers, Fred Fenixon, and many more, and connect with a community of true Bitcoiners. Get your tickets now before prices go up, and use my link below for a discount. See you there.
I think so, and I've never not thought so, but I will say I at this point I'm less convinced than I've ever been, just because of a lot of different things that are happening. And we can get into that as much as you'd like, but for right now, I would say yes. I still believe there is a 4-year cycle. I think that if we're looking at the price in dollars, which is typically what we're talking about when we're referencing a 4-year cycle, there's a lot of other indicators, and metrics that go into that, but the price of dollars priced in Bitcoin, I think that the 4-year cycle is going to hold for at least quite a while longer. I think we're going to have it. We're in a 4-year cycle now. I think we're still going to be in a 4-year cycle 4 years from now. 10 years from now, I don't know. I would say probably. I do think that there will be a diminishing effect over time. I think the 4-year cycle, so to speak, will it will go away. I don't know if it's going to be in our lifetime entirely, at least.
Yeah, that's what I would say, that it's going to be a diminishing cycle. But I know there's a lot of people out there saying no because of the ETF flows and the increased money supply. Where do you think we are in the cycle now? There's lots of people saying this could be the start of a bear. We could continue to go up for a while. And yes, long term, it doesn't matter for Bitcoin hodlers, but in the short term, it's just interesting to think about.
It is. It's interesting to think about, interesting to talk about. People like to hear and talk about this subject. I'll just say I will be the first to admit I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody does. Anybody who says they know what's going to happen in the short term is lying to you and probably trying to sell you something. But the truth is, Bitcoin does go up over time, right? It is my strong held belief that fiat currencies will inevitably collapse against Bitcoin in perpetuity. With that said, I can give you my opinion. I do think that we are going to see. I don't think the quote unquote bull run has fully kicked off yet. I think we are going to see a pretty steep increase in the price of Bitcoin, priced in dollars, over the next few months before a regression. And then I think that, I'll just say, I think that in the next 6 months, we're going to have a period where the price of Bitcoin in dollars is significantly higher than it is right now. I will also say that I think it's going to come down from a peak pretty dramatically as well, too. And the third thing that I'll say as far as what I'm predicting is that the price of Bitcoin a year from now will be higher than it is today. So although I think we're going to have this big, climb, and potentially a blow off top moment and it's going to come down. I think that we are at one of the lowest periods that we're going to have in the foreseeable future. And again, I don't even think in 2026 we will be anywhere as low as we are today.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Sounds logical to me. Why do you say that? Is that because of the macro setup, what's happening in the world at the moment, and the increasing money supply?
So you have geopolitical game theory taking place, right before our eyes. Right now, today, the way that we are seeing that happen is forfeitures or seizures, right? So we have governments that are acquiring massive amounts of Bitcoin. We had the UK acquire an insane amount of Bitcoin a few months ago, or maybe about a month ago now. The US just acquired another large stash of Bitcoin. And this has kind of been pretty popular, right? So, how have governments been getting their Bitcoin? Well, they're having other people steal it for them, basically. That's not even a stretch to say. That's exactly what's happening. Is people are doing things, stealing Bitcoin or running these scams, and then the government comes in and says, "Oh, hey, that's ours, by the way. Hand that over." And so right now, uh, governments are sitting on a lot of Bitcoin, and that's the primary method that governments have been acquiring it. So that's one thing is geopolitical game theory is kicking up, and I think that we're going to move from a period of this clandestine acquisition of Bitcoin, meaning they're doing it in secret, which is what's happening right now. I think we're going to go from that to a public acquisition strategy, probably starting with the United States. I expect that to happen at some point in the near future. It's already been discussed and disclosed. The president has signed an executive order on the subject. So I think that all of what's happened over the last year or so has been priming the public for this. I am glad that it hasn't happened yet, but I do think that it is inevitable. There's going to be a day where the United States and the country and a lot of countries following the United States are going to start actively and publicly acquiring Bitcoin. And once that happens, things just get nuts. So that's really unpredictable. But a lot of things that we can see are what the publicly traded companies are doing, what these ETFs are doing. They're acquiring a lot of Bitcoin, and we can see that. One of the main things that I'm looking at is the perpetual preferred stocks that Strategy is offering. They are attacking the bond market. And they've been saying this for a long time. But the one thing that we're seeing right now, and I think that what the killer product right now is that's being delivered is called Stretch, STRC. And now I don't advocate any Bitcoiner go out and buy Stretch over Bitcoin, but Stretch is intended to focus on a totally different subset of the market, people that don't care about or want Bitcoin, right? These are people that are just chasing fiat gains, and it's replacing a lot of the systems that are already in place. A lot of the fixed income, a lot of the bond market is focused on getting these yields, and Stretch is just a better option. And the reason why Stretch works is because they're just subsidizing the gains that they're getting from Bitcoin, right? So it's basically an arbitrage on the cost of capital in the capital markets and the cumulative average growth rate that Bitcoin provides. And so they're able to basically scrape off the cream on the top and then provide the 10 plus or so percent to the capital markets. So Stretch, I think, is going to be an incredible tool because the way that it works is it's pegged to what's called a par value, which is at $100. So Stretch is sitting right around $100 today, and every a dollar that comes into Stretch, Strategy is actually able to print those shares. And when they do that, they sell these shares essentially for free, and they take the cash, the fiat, and they go buy Bitcoin with it. That's the whole plan. And then when Bitcoin goes up, Stretch seems to have more there's more reserve and backing, more collateral backing the security, and so it becomes more and more secured, and that can increase things like credit ratings, which make it available to even more people. And so anybody can buy Stretch. It's a retail product, but I think that it's going to have pretty profound effects in the bond market, with banks, with hedge funds, with a lot of different types of financial products, because uh, treasury bonds back a lot of the financial market, trillions and trillions of dollars. And these treasury bonds are not nearly as profitable as Stretch. Now, Stretch, of course, is backed by a public company. It is not backed by a government. Treasury bonds are backed by the government. But as faith and trust wane in the government, then there's a better risk adjusted return for the rates that you're getting through the public market. So that, I think, is going to be a catalyst to what sends us into this next leg. If I had to name one thing specifically, it's going to be that one specific product. It'll be Stretch.
I think you're spot on, Adam. You're a smart guy. I just, I follow Invest Answers, and he is not Bitcoin only, but he's the smartest investor, fiat investor I know. And he just advocated to his very big following to buy Stretch for cash. And I spoke to someone in the gym today who just told me, young girl, she bought Stretch. So I'm already hearing about it. I think you're right on.
I think it's a really easy sell because it's extremely collateralized, meaning there's like all of this Bitcoin, billions and billions of dollars of Bitcoin held on the strategy balance sheet. It's extremely high in the preferential preferred list. So it's like, as far as seniorage goes, it is so it goes Strife and then Stretch. So Strife is the most preferred security by the company, which means it's the first to get paid out in the event that something bad happens, right? Nobody's expecting anything bad to happen, but it is possible. Then Stretch is next. So then it goes down from Strife, Stretch, Strike, and then Stride. So there are 4 different preferred stocks offered by Strategy. And if, let's say Bitcoin goes down tremendously and they're having trouble paying their bills or something, Stride is going to be the first to get cut, and then Strike, and then you have Stretch, right? Well, let me back up. Actually, the first to get cut is going to be the common. So it's just MSTR. So if you're just buying the common stock, MSTR, you're actually the last one to get paid. So an MSTR has a massive market cap on its own. So and they have what's called an ATM, which is at the market. They can issue shares at the market, which means they can print shares to pay off these preferreds, which is what they've been doing. And so the amount of runway they have on these preferreds is absolutely insane. In fact, I would say that it is, it's probably one of the most collateralized financial products in the world, even compared to, government debt. So I'm not an expert in this subject, for the record, but these are just my opinions.
And you personally don't invest in them, but you follow them.
I do not own any Stretch, but it's something I've recommended to, for example, my dad. My dad, he's one of these people who he gets, the value of Bitcoin and why Bitcoin is important, and that it can increase his purchasing power, but he's kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out still, and he likes to invest in, the traditional fiat world too. And when you can say, hey, you can buy this product and get 10% instead of putting it in your savings account, why are you holding money in your bank account that's paying you like sub 1%? It's not even paying you 1%. Go put that in Stretch, treat it like your bank, and you're going to get 10%. And again, I'm not trying to sell Stretch over Bitcoin, because if you can just go buy Bitcoin, I think that is a much better option. It's not financial advice here, but why would you give up a 50 to 70% growth rate for 10? But guys, by the way, the only reason why Stretch makes any money is because Bitcoin appreciates in value against the dollar. And so once you understand that, just skip to the Bitcoin part, right? You don't need to get into these fiat instruments. Just go straight to Bitcoin. That's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard you say that you believe CBDCs are inevitable, and it certainly looks that way. Tell us about this, and also why that's even more reason to be in Bitcoin.
I could probably talk about this all day. I'll try to keep it somewhat short and sweet, but why are CBDCs inevitable? Well, the reason is because governments only ever want more control. And that's just been true since we've been on this earth. And over time, we give up more and more control, usually as a temporary measure, and then we never get it back. And so we're giving up our freedoms very slowly over time. Our freedoms are being eroded. And the biggest and most powerful tool that governments can use to do this are CBDCs. And once you have a bona fide CBDC ruled out to your citizens, you have nearly full and total control over your populace as a government. And this is, not like some fantasy. CBDCs already exist all over the world, and China's probably the best example. So they've had a CBDC for a long time, and they're able to control their citizens through a process called social credit scoring. And so their social credit system is what allows the government to interact with their citizens without ever even needing a warrant or a judgment. These people never got to see an actual court. These are all just unilateral measures performed by the government based off of a set of rules that they have set. And sometimes, those rules can be bent a little bit too by the people in power. And so if you say something or do something that the government doesn't like or approve of, they can deduct money from your account. They can close your account. They can require you to spend your money only with certain people. And so they can subsidize industries and companies. They can do essentially whatever they want if they can control your money. In fact, I think there's a quote from, believe it was one of the Rothschilds. I don't remember the first name, but the quote was, give me control over the money and I care not who makes the laws, I think is the quote roughly. I probably butchered that, but essentially what the quote means and describes is the laws are irrelevant if you can control the money. That is what really matters from the position of control. And we're seeing CBDCs gain interest all over the world. Europe is expecting to roll out a CBDC in the very near future. Last I checked a few months ago, they said they were going to have it in October. I don't think that doesn't look like that's happened at this point. But and then you see the UK going down a very similar path as well with this digital ID. So digital ID and CBDCs are inextricably linked. In fact, CBDCs are just currency plus digital ID, right? That is what a CBDC is. And once you have those two things together, the government all of a sudden is in complete control over everybody all the time. And so that is what we're seeing progress in the world right now, is this adoption of CBDCs. I think they're coming to a town near you. Anybody that's watching, eventually they're going to come. It's just a matter of time. What we have, in my opinion, what we have to do in order to protect ourselves against that is we have to develop an economy and an infrastructure to give people a life raft, a second option, right? Although I think CBDCs are definitely coming, that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't have alternatives. And I think Bitcoin is the only solution to that. But I will also say that the only way, and let me emphasize this again, the only way we can prevent or at least protect ourselves from a CBDC is to use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange currency through self-custody. We can't do it through an ETF. We can't do it through a stock. We can't do it through a Bitcoin-backed stable coin. It has to be Bitcoin in self-custody that no one can stop, no one can seize, no one can censor. That is the only way we can protect ourselves against this.
And do you believe we're moving towards that?
I'm just one person, but I'm doing what I can to try to help people have an alternative option. I saw a big gap in the market for the need for a product to be able to defend themselves against a CBDC. Meaning, if you can't easily spend Bitcoin, then a CBDC is your only option. You have to be able to find somebody that can sell you something that you need and be able to pay them in Bitcoin, or else you're going to just be paying them with the CBDC that the government prescribes. And so I didn't see a lot of great options when I started building Manna. I will say that the marketplace looks a lot better now. There are a lot of great competitors to Manna that are doing a wonderful job, and I think that we're all in this together. We all have the same mission, and those other companies succeeding only benefits everybody together as a collective. I do think that it's still really small, and the amount of people that are um, ready for something like a CBDC, it's a very small group of people. So I think that my job today is to get that number of people to grow. And my view on doing that is to give people an app and an experience that is superior to using fiat. Like, we don't need to downgrade in order to protect ourselves. Like, the fact that Manna is self-custodial, it's private, it's uncensorable, it's what I call unruggable. Like, we can't steal anybody's money. No one can. You're in full control of your own funds. Like, the fact that it has all those things are just like this added benefit. The primary product is just money that's easy to use, right? That's why people want to use Manna. It's because it's easy and it feels good, and they can tell their friends and family about it. And it's just a more enjoyable experience than trying to send money, like we talked about earlier, trying to send money to someone overseas through the financial system, right? Manna is just easier. You just put somebody's name in and you send them the money. You don't need to connect a bank account. You don't need to give anybody any personal information, no email address, no phone number, no name. And so it's also great for kids because, a lot of kids can't set up a bank account, but they can have a Manna wallet and they can receive, like my daughter, for example, she sells eggs. So we have chickens and she sells eggs for Bitcoin. She can't use a bank account by herself, but she puts up, Manna on her tablet that she's got, and she can receive Bitcoin directly from anybody.
That's really cool. Yeah, if 9-year-olds can do it, we can do it. And I have to say that I did open a wallet with Manna, and it was really easy, and I really loved it. So I'm going to use it, and I
Thank you.
highly recommend it.
Thank you very much.
Tell us how Bitcoin and sovereignty has changed you.
Well, it's changed everything about me almost. The only thing that's changed me more in my life is my relationship with God. But Bitcoin is like I say to people, I say Jesus can save your soul, and Bitcoin can save your currency, your finances, right? So Bitcoin has saved everything that my finances touch, right? Which is pretty much everything in this temporal realm. So my just my everyday life, how I do things, how I see things, how I view things, it has touched almost every aspect of what I do. It's made me question a lot of things, because now that I know that I can figure out how things work, Bitcoin was just the first step to that. I've questioned everything. I've questioned the medical industry. I've questioned governments. I've questioned, all of the media and propaganda that I've been consuming over my life. I've questioned, history. I've questioned pretty much everything because now I'm interested in finding the truth. And Bitcoin being a central point of truth has given me the motivation and the understanding that there is an objective truth in many of these things in life, and it's attainable to discover. So it's helped me improve my health. It's helped me focus more on spending time with my family. It's helped me, like I mentioned earlier, it's made me uncancelable. For anybody that follows me on X, they probably already know I say what I want to say, and sometimes I upset some people, and that's okay. But I think that that's one of the benefits to Bitcoin is you can say things and you can upset people. And I speak what I believe, even though it does rub people the wrong way sometimes. And I don't think I could have done that without Bitcoin because I would have always constantly lived in fear of, what if my boss finds this, or what if I get fired, or somebody, wants to cancel me? or, you know, there's so many different ways of looking at that. But just fully embracing freedom of speech is one of the biggest changes that I've seen that Bitcoin has given me. So um, I think that's something that everybody can get, but you can't have that while you're, fully living in this connected, centralized fiat world where you can be canceled. So yeah, I think that's my answer. I think it's changed pretty much everything.
I love that. Can't cancel me. Love it. I meant to ask you this earlier, but just quickly, do you think there are any major attack vectors for Bitcoin? The core versus knots, node debate, or quantum computing? Anything that concerns you?
Yeah. Um, it doesn't concern me from the perspective that I think that it will kill Bitcoin. Some people are going as far as saying that, Bitcoin will die. I don't think at this point any of those things could kill Bitcoin. I do think that there is a way to stop Bitcoin, and I think that there is precisely one way to stop Bitcoin, and that is to not need it. That is by governments being fiscally responsible and not printing money and having a currency that doesn't get debased or censored. Um, that's never going to happen. So I don't think Bitcoin can die. Um, I'm not 100% sure that the implementation that we're running on our nodes today is going to be the one that we're going to run in 20 years. That doesn't, that's not what I'm saying. But Bitcoin itself, the idea of Bitcoin, Pandora's box has already been opened. It can't be put back in. So the question about knots and core and the implementation war, and I just wrote a poem that was great. I would say it does concern me. Um, I don't want to raise any alarms because I don't think people generally need to be worried about it. I really don't think it's that big of a problem long term for Bitcoin. It'll get worked out, but it does bother me, as it bothers a lot of people right now. We're getting pretty tired of this, and it's divided the Bitcoiners quite a bit. Um, and I don't know. I mean, I've gone back and forth a lot on this stance. I will say, just because you've asked me and I have a platform to speak my mind right now, I am vehemently, adamantly, 100% against the decisions made by the core maintainers to move forward with V30, version 30, and the expansion of op return. It's not on a technical, I don't have a technical argument for it. It's more of a social argument. Um, I think that they moved forward without sufficient consensus, and they acted in bad faith, in my opinion. And I think the right thing for them to do would have been to pump the brakes and to have some more discussion and conversation before they just started moving. And that's why I do not support core. I run knots, and I'm not saying that I'm like a knots maxi either. In fact, knots has done a lot of things that I don't support either. But I run knots just simply because I know for sure that I will never agree with anything that the core maintainers are doing from now on. So, say you're out there and you're wondering, what implementation to run. Maybe the most popular implementation right now, I think by node count, I believe is version 28 of core. And if you're running core version 28, I don't think you necessarily have to worry about this. You don't need to do anything. I think you're fine. If you want to run knots, I think that's okay too. I think the only wrong answer is to run core 30. That's my opinion. So yeah, I'll say that. But I'll also say, just just thinking, talking, and speculating here. If I was, let's just say, like a large government, and I had a lot to lose from Bitcoin, and I wanted to figure out how I could get Bitcoin to not proliferate. I can't kill it, but I could probably diminish its impact to as many people as possible by doing certain things. I think one of the strategies that I could probably conceive would be to come up with a very contentious upgrade from the most popular implementation, meaning core. Basically, 99% of Bitcoiners were running core before this argument started. And I would push an update through, and then I would have a quote unquote solution. I'm not saying that this is what happened, but this is just speculating here. I would have a solution that is also a bad option that I maybe control. I'm not saying the government controls knots. I'm not saying that, some secret agency controls knots. I'm not saying the whole thing's a psyop. I'm just saying that if I wanted to divide Bitcoin as much as possible, this is one of the options that I would probably have in my arsenal. And so, and I'm only saying that mostly because it's working, right? Bitcoiners are fighting each other right now. People are getting, blocked left and right. There are lots of nasty things being thrown around and said, and accusations being made. And so if it is, if it is working, if this is the outcome, is it possible that this was a desired outcome? I think that's definitely possible. So I'm just cautious about everything. I think my 100% opinion about what I would want to see in Bitcoin is more akin to ossification. I don't think we should be upgrading Bitcoin. I'm okay with like emergency maintenance that may need to take place in the future. And the way I see that is we're going to have to do that, right? There will be an argument to be made to convince enough people that something needs to be fixed. And so that's my position. I think that we should popularize not changing or upgrading Bitcoin, leave it alone. And by the way, Bitcoin is on the trajectory to usurp central banks. We are on the way. Why are we trying to fix that? It's not broken. Like, stop adding stuff to Bitcoin. That is my opinion. I don't want any new features. I don't want any new filters. I don't want any new opcode expansions. I don't want anything. I just want Bitcoin to do what it does and what it's always done. And if there's an emergency, then good luck convincing me. Maybe I'm convinced, but you got to have a good argument. And so far, I don't see any argument for anything that's been updated or upgraded on any implementation in the last 3 or 4 years at least. So that's where I stand. I don't like any changes to Bitcoin. I don't run knots because they changed Bitcoin. And I'm not saying they changed Bitcoin on the protocol level, but just relay policy and stuff like that. I think it's probably best just leave stuff alone. And the more implementations that we have, the more options we have, I think is better. And I will also say that I think all of this fighting and arguing is making a very good case for ossification. I think a lot of people are just tired of it. And unfortunately, there isn't a great option right now. There are some implementations out there that are trying to go down this path, but they don't have a ton of popularity. But I think that if we get a popular ossification option, a lot of people would be very open to that idea right now. And by the way, I keep using this word ossification. People might not know what that means. It just means not changing Bitcoin. It means solidifying Bitcoin as the code that it is and not adding upgrades to it every so often, which is what these other developers and maintainers are doing. So that's my stance.
Well, I think you lay out a really great case, and everything you said, I believe, is possible and very well said. And because this is at the end of the interview, I'll have to make a clip of this and repost it so we get this message out. The one question I would say with Bitcoin, would there come a time when we need to maybe make changes to avoid that quantum computing attack?
Yeah, it's possible. I think there's nothing wrong with waiting until it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is very secure. Bitcoin is not going to be the first thing to fall with quantum computing. Quantum computing, I think, theoretically could crack SHA-256, but I think we're probably a long way out from that. But there's a lot of other algorithms that are going to fall before that. So we have lots and lots and lots and lots of time to figure that out. And when that day comes, quantum computing will be here, then we'll figure it out. Like, if we have to upgrade, we will. But we don't have to right now. Like, let's just, for example, I've got a fire extinguisher in my house, and I have that in case my house catches on fire. but I'm not like prematurely spraying my house with, the contents of that fire extinguisher. There's no fire here yet. Like, let's just wait. Let's wait until there's a fire, and then we'll use the fire extinguisher when we need it.
Exactly. Very well put. Tell us where people can find you, Adam.
I'm on X primarily, Twitter, at Adam Simecka. That's ADAMSIMECKA. So that's where I spend most of my time. If you're interested in the Bitcoin payments, the username over there, the handle is at Manna Bitcoin with 2 N's. So MANNA Bitcoin.
I'll put links below. And thank you so much for joining me today. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Paula. I appreciate you having me. It was nice meeting you too.